Before we begin, a note. This episode contains stillbirth and infant loss. If that's not something you can be with today, it's okay to sit this one out and come back another time. Spoiler alert. These episodes go deep into the book, chapter, and character names included. If you'd rather read the stories fresh first, this might be one to save. Hi everyone, my name is Crystal Kayeeb Zeb. I am a transformation coach and a shaman, and I help people around the world shift their limiting beliefs and bring their souls back home. And this year, I became an author when I wrote The Human Experience: Stories of Spiritual Healing and Transformation. Welcome to my limited series podcast, The Human Experience, in which I'll be diving into the stories in this book, and you and I together will be witnessing the healing, transformation, and evolution of my clients. We'll be going through each story, and we'll also be coming together and learning all the lessons and wisdoms that my clients were learning going through their experiences. And we'll also learn how we can apply these lessons and wisdoms to our lives today. I'm so excited that you're here with me, and this is my first time hosting a podcast, so I'm so excited, and let's just jump right in. Now, today, I want to talk about self blame and how it can disguise itself as accountability and responsibility, and why self forgiveness is the only thing that can actually help tell the difference. This is Baby Girl. Now, I want to ask you, have you ever taken the blame for something that has happened to you and told yourself that it was just you being accountable or responsible when really a part of you was actually just punishing yourself? And I'd love for you to keep that in mind as we go through the story, because self blame can really disguise itself as responsibility and accountability. Self blame, self shame, self punishment can disguise itself as accountability and responsibility. And today's story shows exactly that gap. A penance carried for almost half a decade, and what it finally took for my client to close it. So now I want to introduce to you my client Violet, a young and beautiful, vivacious girl who married her high school sweetheart Liam. After they got married, they got pregnant during COVID, during the pandemic, and she was so excited. She was so young, and her Liam was also so excited for his wife, and they were just happy for each other. And so she started to learn everything she can until the 6 month mark started rolling around. And that's when she experienced a dull ache in her stomach that she felt was kind of off. So she talked to Liam about it, and they were like, yep, okay, let's go to the doctors just to be safe. Let's check it out. Now, it's the pandemic, so Liam has to wait in the car while she goes into the doctors by herself. And that's when the doctor assesses her, runs some tests, and in this moment, Violet can tell that something's off, that the doctor knows something and she's about to receive bad news, but she doesn't want to believe it, so she kind of waits for a positive answer that never ever really comes. And in that moment, her doctor looks at her and simply says, Violet, I'm so sorry. Your child has already passed. And with that devastating news, Violet immediately goes into shock. Her doctor's still talking, but she can't hear anything anymore. Her soul jumps out of her body. She runs. She screams into the abyss, and Violet's just here, like the life draining from her. And mind you, again, Liam's sitting in the car. He doesn't know what's going on. And as she's processing this and she's trying to process what her doctor is saying, her mind takes her to so many different places. Her mind is trying to recall what she ate yesterday, what she ate last week, what she drank. Maybe she made a mistake somewhere. Maybe it was her fault. And then her mind takes her to somewhere farther than that. Her mind concludes that surely this is karmic punishment, and that Violet is being punished for something she must have done in a past life. That was the only way she could explain what she was enduring and going through right now. And as she's taking on this blame, and as she's trying to make sense of something that feels senseless, she's also realizing that this is not where this nightmare ends for her, because she still has to deliver this stillborn child, and she still has to bury them after. Sometimes it's easier for us to point fingers at ourselves when things aren't working out, when something happens to us that we can't explain. Sometimes the guilt and the shame eats at us so um, loudly, so much so that even if the person who, for example, even if someone was to inflict pain on us, we may find ourselves taking accountability and responsibility for what they did too, and just lumping it on ourselves and saying, I'm taking accountability, I'm taking responsibility, I am taking all of it, I'm taking all of it. Sometimes what's masked as accountability and responsibility, or masked as full accountability and full responsibility, is just another way to self punish, self blame, and self shame ourselves. So, about almost a half a decade later, Violet and I are sitting on a Zoom call, and she decides that she wants to meet me just to talk about some everyday stuff, right? She kind of wants to work through some everyday belief systems that she's got, some limiting beliefs, and she just kind of wants to navigate it and see how it can change. Cool. Sounds great. That's something that I'm open to, and I think that it'll be a great idea, so let's do it together. As we're doing this, one thing leads to another, as they always do in these kinds of sessions, and we suddenly get back to the death of her stillborn daughter. And we sit on this because we realize that there's been a ripple effect since that day that has kind of played out into our everyday lives or I'm sorry, played out into her everyday lives that she hasn't really realized. So we talk, and Creator nudges me. Creator goes, this is the moment for her to reconnect with her daughter. Now, I want to explain that not all souls, when called upon, will come into a session and sit with us and talk with us. Sometimes they show up, sometimes they don't. In this moment, her daughter's soul did show up, and Creator mentioned to me that this was the moment Violet could have with her to talk and speak about everything that had always been in her heart, but that Violet had never really been able to say out loud because she was in so much grief and turmoil at the time that she never really fully got to express herself. And I would like to read that passage for you today. Eyes closed, I cleansed our space one more time, then I brought Violet to see her daughter. And before her eyes, a bright light bloomed, shifting through colors, and her daughter came down, appearing as a golden white light, full of warmth and harmony. Her body exhaled with relief on the physical plane. Violet gasped, "It's my daughter." And this time Violet opened her mouth, speaking loudly, clearly, and said everything her guilt had kept hidden the last 4 years. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I failed you. I'm sorry I couldn't have you. I'm sorry our time was so short. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you, and I'm sorry I didn't love you enough." Her voice faltered. "And I'm sorry I didn't get to be your mother in this lifetime." She continued to pour her heart out, telling her how much she loved her, how much she wanted her to stay, how much she wanted to be a family with her stillborn daughter, and how she would carry the memory of her daughter forever and always in her heart, her mind, her body, and her soul. I asked Violet what it was that her daughter wanted her to know. Violet's face changed. She was surprised, then filled with peace. She says that this was never karmic, and she wanted me to know that I didn't fail her. There's nothing to apologize for. There's no need for guilt or shame. Violet's voice was full of great relief. She's showing me that it wasn't anything my body did, nothing I could have controlled or changed. All this time, Violet had carried this as her sentence, but her daughter had never handed it to her. I watched guilt leave Violet's body. I watched regret release its hold. Sometimes we are our own worst enemies. Sometimes we are our biggest critics, and sometimes we are the biggest inflictors of pain upon ourselves. We do it to ourselves. We're doing it to ourselves. And in this moment, it was when Violet realized, oh my gosh, my daughter never felt differently about me. She never felt any type of way about me, and that I had been carrying this myself. And when something out of our control happens, again, we go looking for a reason. Anything to really make sense of like what's happening to us or what's going on with us. We'll even reach for fault like I said, before even realizing that maybe it was never our fault to begin with. And Violet did that for 4 years. Now, she did that not because she wanted to suffer. She didn't punish herself because she wanted to suffer per se, but because blaming herself felt like the only way to make sense of something that felt so senseless. Violet, this was an important moment for you to reunite with your daughter, to speak your last words with her. But this moment is also an opportunity for forgiveness. Are you ready to do that? Who am I forgiving? Before I could answer, her confusion became realization. Me. I need to forgive myself. Yes, I affirmed. This was never about forgiving anyone else. This is about forgiving yourself, having compassion for that version of you that feels she failed. I called younger Violet, a fragmented piece of Violet's soul, to meet us in the flower fields. That version landed, carrying the same dazed, distant, and full of sorrow look I saw prior. Taking her hand, present day Violet whispered, I forgive you. I forgive us for being so hard on ourselves, punishing ourselves and believing we weren't enough, that we were imperfect, for believing our bodies failed us and our bodies were broken. I forgive all of us. I could feel younger Violet becoming lighter. The guilt and regret she carried for so long began to lift from her shoulders. So now, through Violet's own self forgiveness, was where she was really finally able to release that guilt. And some of you may be asking, why does she need to forgive herself if you said yourself that she didn't do anything wrong? That's true. She didn't do anything wrong in this situation. What she was forgiving herself for was how hard she was on herself. She's forgiving herself for carrying self blame, for carrying the shame, for carrying the punishment. And now, through all that experience, she finally says, what happened, happened. I can't go back and change it. And that's okay. We can't change the past. I now understand that when the timing is right, I'll get to meet my daughter again. I realized my daughter just needed my love, not my guilt. And I would go on to also argue that she also needed her own love. She also never needed her own guilt, that she was simply needing love poured back into her in that moment. Instead of self punishing, she needed compassion. She needed unconditional love poured back into her. And no one could give her that, not even her partner, because it didn't matter how much her partner would have said it's not your fault. It was up to Violet to realize and recognize that it wasn't her fault and that it was okay for her to pour compassion and unconditional love back into herself. So you may be finding yourself asking now, why would people postpone offering themselves compassion or self-forgiveness in the first place? That's a great question, and I can answer for you here. Sometimes self compassion can feel like it lets them off the hook. Staying harsh feels like accountability, and to say, surely you played a part in what was out of your control, even when it really was just self punishment that you were inflicting this whole time. There may also be a shame over whose pain gets to count, a sense that someone else's loss may be bigger than your own. So, how could you experience this? How could you feel this way right now when so and so just had a bigger loss than yours? So and so's pain is bigger than your own. But that is also asking you to realize that you're not here to compare pain and suffering. There could also be a fear that softness means weakness. And I often find this in my clients who are eldest daughters, eldest sons, and caretakers in a family. Sometimes feeling soft feels dangerous because they feel like they were never given that softness or they never knew how to be soft. And lastly, many people have never had self compassion modeled to them, so how could they model it for themselves? And so now I would love for you to think back on a moment when something was out of your control, it was out of your hands. And I want you to ask yourself honestly, have you forgiven yourself for what you could not control? And if not, would you be open to the curiosity of what it means to offer that version of you compassion? Now, Violet couldn't offer herself compassion and grace and forgiveness inside her own guilt. And that's not a flaw in her, and that's not a flaw in you. That's actually the ceiling of doing these kind of things alone. My one-on-one sessions exist exactly for this, for someone to be able to hold you in a compassionate place and to be able to realize that healing has always been something that has never been out of your reach. If you feel called to work with me, it would be an honor to walk with you on your healing journey. Go ahead and follow this link here to book your one-on-one session with me now. Now, this form of self condemnation, I actually see a lot in a lot of my clients. It's not just Violet that I see this in. And more often than not, these people carry forms of self blame, self shame, and they also feel like this is the way to motivate them by holding on to this self punishment, by punishing themselves by blaming themselves that surely should this situation happen again or arise in the future that they would be faster, they could act faster, they could change things, they could have made a difference, and that should they ever be caught in the same situation again, that by being harsh on themselves and punishing themselves now, it could change them and motivate them to be different, to do different. But rarely do we see this come out as they would intend it to or really wanted to. Sure, the motivation through self punishment may work for a while, but eventually, all of this eventually catches up to you where you reach this place where you feel exhausted from the self punishment. You feel exhausted from the self shame, and it could manifest in different ways where it can manifest physically through an illness or gaining weight, or it could feel like never being able to return back to normalcy. Even when you're acting out normalcy out in real life, in your mind, there's this constant loop that is playing. So, one thing I would love for you to do this week is think of a grief you've been carrying, not to fix it, but the curiosity to offer yourself the compassion you've been withholding. And I want you to simply ask yourself, what does it mean to release yourself of blame for something that happened to you? And now, before I let you go, I want to leave you with something. It's not Violet's story, it came through in a different session, and it's about grief in general. But I think that it says something true that I'd love to leave here with you. A client's soul joins our session. She wants to express all that her human counterpart will not speak out loud. She shows me the beauty of the cosmos, galaxies far away, planets nearby, and stars shooting amongst the vast skies. Then she shows me herself, floating like a lonely star, belonging to no solar system. We talk about grief, sadness, how these feelings have been the only constant she's carried across all her lifetimes. I ask, why do you hold on? She answers, because it's only what we know. I wonder, but what if you could know more by letting go? She hesitates, returning a profound question. If we let go of our sadness, what would we have left? And the Creator, in all their compassion and grace, responds with, you would have hope. I hope all of you will join me for next week's episode on what happens when the role we have had all our life becomes our sole identity, and what happens when that role is the role that breaks you. If any part of this episode felt close to home, that's not coincidence, that's an invitation. To those I'm destined to meet next, I'll see you soon.